At the end of January 1933, when Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Paul von Hindenburg, the Nazi Party began to consolidate its power with astonishing speed. Within weeks, the Nazis used the Reichstag fire on February 27, 1933, as a pretext to issue the Reichstag Fire Decree, which suspended basic civil rights such as freedom of speech, press, and assembly. Thousands of communists, socialists, and other political opponents were arrested and sent to early concentration camps like Dachau, which opened in March 1933 as a place for political re-education. Nazi brutality did not stop there. They quickly targeted independent trade unions, which were seen as a threat due to their support base among the working class. On May 2, 1933, Sturmabteilung and Schutzstaffel troops stormed trade union offices across Germany, arrested their leaders, and seized their assets. This was part of Gleichschaltung, a coordination process where all aspects of German society were forced to align with Nazi ideology. With their power solidified, the Nazis understood that violence alone was not enough to maintain long-term support. They needed a tool to shape public opinion, brainwash the German people, and build mass loyalty. This is where propaganda played a central role. Joseph Goebbels, appointed as the Minister of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda in March 1933, controlled all media, newspapers, radio, film, and the arts. And behind this propaganda effort focused on the working class stood a key figure, Robert Ley. As the head of the German Labor Front, Deutsche Arbeitsfront, DAF, Ley became one of the chief architects in brainwashing millions of German workers. The DAF, established in May 1933 after the destruction of independent trade unions, was not a true union, but a compulsory Nazi organization for all non-Jewish workers. With over 25 million members at its peak, the DAF under Ley became the largest propaganda tool in the Third Reich, promoting Nazi ideology through education, entertainment, and economic control. Ley was not a propagandist like Goebbels, who focused on mass media, but he was a specialist in industrial propaganda. He used the DAF to spread the narrative that the Nazis were creating an egalitarian society where workers and employers were united in service to the nation. Through DAF newspapers like Arbeitertum and public speeches, Ley attacked Jewish capitalism and communism, while praising Hitler as the savior of the working class. However, behind this facade, the DAF was a tool to suppress wages, extend working hours, and prevent strikes, all to prepare Germany for war. Robert Ley was born on February 15, 1890, in Niederbreidenbach, a small village in the Rhineland, western Germany. He was the sixth of 11 children in a poor Protestant farming family. His childhood was marked by poverty after his father, a school teacher, was arrested for embezzlement in 1900, leaving the family in debt. Despite this, Ley showed academic intelligence. He studied chemistry at the universities of Jena, Bonn, and Münster, earning his doctorate in 1914 with a dissertation on organic compounds. However, his academic career was interrupted by World War I, where he served as an artillery observer on the Western Front. In 1917, his plane was shot down by French forces, causing severe leg injuries and permanent brain damage, a head trauma that likely contributed to his later impulsive behavior and alcoholism. After the war, Ley worked as a chemist for IG Farben, the giant chemical company that would later be implicated in Nazi crimes. His dissatisfaction with the Treaty of Versailles and the hyperinflation of 1923 led him to join the NSDAP in 1924, shortly after the failed Munich Putsch. He rose rapidly through the ranks, becoming Gauleiter, regional leader, for the southern Rhineland in 1925, and was elected as a member of the Reichstag in 1928. Ley was known as a fiery orator and a virulent anti-Semite. Ley was known to be corrupt and hedonistic. He misused DAF funds for a luxurious lifestyle, palaces, luxury cars, and affairs. His alcoholism worsened, and he often appeared drunk at public events, earning him the nickname Reichstrunkenbold, the Reich's Drunkard. Nevertheless, his loyalty to Hitler was unshakable. He was one of the first Nazis to promote the Führerprinzip, the principle of absolute leadership. When World War II broke out in September 1939 with the invasion of Poland, Ley's role evolved into one of the cruelest in the Nazi regime. As head of the DAF, he was responsible for mobilizing German labor for the war economy. Initially, this involved voluntary recruitment and internal coercion. Millions of women and teenagers were forced to work in factories, while workers' rights were increasingly suppressed. However, as the war expanded, Ley collaborated with Fritz Sauckel, the plenipotentiary for labor, to recruit millions of forced laborers from occupied countries. This was Ley's greatest crime, organizing a massive slave labor system. From 1940 to 1945, approximately 12 million people from Eastern Europe, France, the Netherlands, and other countries were deported to Germany to work in weapons factories, mines, and agriculture. These forced laborers, often called Ostarbeiter, Eastern workers, were treated as subhuman. They lived in squalid barracks, were given minimal food, and were forced to work 12 to 14 hours a day without adequate pay. Thousands died from starvation, disease, or execution. In the final stages of the war, as the Allies closed in, Ley remained loyal to Hitler. He was involved in the propaganda campaign to support the Volkssturm, a people's militia consisting of elderly men and teenagers, formed as a last-ditch defense of the Reich. Although his role was more ideological and propagandistic than direct military command, he remained a public face calling for total resistance. However, his crimes, particularly related to the forced labor system, did not go unnoticed. Ley was identified as a major war criminal by the Allies. Finally, in the spring of 1945, the Third Reich collapsed under the pressure of Allied invasions from the west and east. Berlin fell on May 2, 1945, and Hitler committed suicide in the Führer bunker on April 30th. Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 8, 1945, marking the end of World War II in Europe. This defeat was accompanied by the horrific discovery of concentration camps like Auschwitz and Dachau, which revealed the full scale of Nazi crimes to the world. Robert Ley was captured by American troops on May 16, 1945, in the Bavarian mountains, where he was hiding under an alias. He was taken to Nuremberg to be tried as one of the 24 main defendants in the International Military Tribunal. Ley was indicted on 4 counts: planning a war of aggression, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and conspiracy. In particular, his role in forced labor and anti-Semitic propaganda were key pieces of evidence against him. However, Ley never faced trial. On October 25, 1945, in his Nuremberg prison cell, he committed suicide by hanging himself using a towel soaked in water and tied to a toilet pipe. In his suicide note, Ley defended himself as a victim of international hatred and denied knowledge of the Holocaust, despite evidence to the contrary.